The Galactic Culinary Academy's assignment hall buzzed with nervous energy as Professor Zekathara announced the final examination. Her crystalline exoskeleton caught the artificial sunlight streaming through the dome's transparent panels as she addressed the diverse assembly of students from across known space. Class 2387, your final assessment requires you to prepare a meal for 5 individuals using only primitive cooking methods. No molecular synthesizers. No thermal manipulators, no quantum flavor enhancers, the crystalline instructor announced, her voice resonating like wind chimes. You have 4 standard hours. Jackson Martinez leaned back in his chair, a slight grin playing across his weathered features. The 24-year-old human had joined the academy 6 months ago, much to the bewilderment of his classmates. Most species considered humans to be primitive, barely out of their Stone Age compared to civilizations that had been manipulating matter at the atomic level for millennia. Beside him, Lily Chen frantically scribbled notes with her stylus, her dark eyes darting between the assignment parameters displayed on her holographic tablet. The pair had become unlikely study partners, bonding over their shared status as the Academy's only human students. Primitive cooking methods, Lily muttered under her breath. What do they consider primitive? Thermal induction? Chemical reactions? The other students were already dispersing to claim their assigned cooking stations. The vegan delegation moved with fluid grace toward the hydroponic gardens, their photosynthetic skin already beginning to glow with anticipation. The insectoid Clactar clicked and chittered excitedly as they examined the protein cultivation chambers. The gaseous ethereals simply hovered near the energy distillation units, their translucent forms shimmering. Jackson stood slowly, stretching his arms above his head. Come on, Lily. Let's see what they've got for us to work with. Their assigned station was sparse. A small plot of natural soil behind the main academy building. Some basic utensils and access to the emergency food stores. Other students had received advanced equipment disguised as primitive tools. But the human station looked genuinely prehistoric by galactic standards. This is ridiculous, Lily said, examining the simple metal implements. How are we supposed to compete with molecular gastronomy using these? Jackson knelt and grabbed a handful of the dark earth, letting it run between his fingers. His eyes lit up with recognition. This isn't just decorative soil, Lily, this is real, living earth. Look, he pointed to tiny insects and organic matter. They gave us something none of the others have. Dirt? Lily asked skeptically. History. While their classmates began their elaborate preparations, Jackson walked to the storage facility. He emerged with an armload of ingredients that made Lily shake her head in confusion. Root vegetables, grains, dried legumes, and several large pieces of raw protein that the Academy synthesized for carnivorous species. Jackson, what are you doing? The others are already flash cooking at the molecular level, and you're collecting potatoes? Jackson began digging a pit in the earth with primitive hand tools. Trust me, our species didn't conquer a hostile planet by accident. Word of the humans' unusual approach began to spread. Students from other stations started gravitating toward their area, watching with mixture of amusement and curiosity as Jackson constructed what appeared to be an ancient fire pit. Professor Zekathara herself approached, her crystalline form refracting the afternoon light. Student Martinez, she said, her tone carrying the universal academic inflection of concern. Are you certain this approach will yield edible results within the time constraint? Jackson wiped sweat from his brow and grinned. Professor, humans have been perfecting this technique for over 100,000 years. Trust the process. As Jackson worked, Lily began to understand. She gathered dried wood and kindling, her chemistry knowledge helping her select materials that would burn clean and hot. Soon a proper fire crackled in the pit, sending aromatic smoke spiraling into the alien sky. The watching crowd grew larger. The ethereal's gaseous forms shimmered with what might have been confusion. The Clactar's clicking intensified to an almost musical rhythm. Even the usually aloof vegans had paused their photosynthetic preparations to observe. Jackson wrapped the root vegetables in leaves and buried them in the coals. The protein went onto an improvised spit that he'd constructed from available materials. The grains and legumes went into a large pot suspended over the fire. As the afternoon progressed, the entire academy began to smell like something none of them had experienced before. The chemical reactions, whispered one of the Clactar. They're happening at the macro level. But the complexity? The proteins are denaturing through controlled thermal application, observed a vegan, their photosynthetic patches flickering with interest. But the flavor compounds being created. Professor Zechthera monitored the other stations with growing concern. The molecular gastronomist had created perfectly calibrated nutritional cubes. The energy-based cooking had produced glowing, vitamin-enriched vapors. Everything was technically perfect and utterly sterile. But from Jackson's fire pit came something different. Layers of aroma that seemed to tell stories, triggering responses in olfactory organs across species lines that had never been stimulated in quite this way. As the 4-hour deadline approached, Jackson and Lily served their meal. It was simple. Roasted root vegetables with crispy, caramelized edges. Slow-cooked protein that fell apart at the touch. Grain and legume stew rich with smoky depth. They had prepared enough for 5 as required. But something unprecedented happened. The watching crowd pressed closer, drawn by senses they didn't fully understand. Professor Zechthera took her required taste, then paused, her crystalline structure resonating with harmonics of surprise. "This is remarkable," she said, "the complexity achieved through such simple methods." Soon the entire academy was gathered around the fire pit. Jackson and Lily found themselves serving not 5 beings but over 300. Students abandoned their own perfectly calibrated nutritional creations to taste something that touched parts of their consciousness they didn't know existed. The ethereals, who hadn't consumed solid matter in millennia, somehow absorbed the aromatic compounds. The vegans discovered that properly cooked plant matter could achieve flavors their species had never imagined. The Klaktar declared it the most complex chemical symphony they had ever experienced. As the alien sun set and the fire crackled lower, Professor Zechthera addressed the assembled academy. "Today we learned that advanced civilization is not always about complexity of tools, but mastery of fundamental principles. The humans have demonstrated that sometimes the oldest ways are the most sophisticated." Jackson poked at the dying coals with a stick, sharing a smile with Lily. Around them, beings from across the galaxy sat in companionable silence, their various forms of digestion processing not just food, but a revelation. Humanity's greatest export, it turned out, wasn't technology or warfare or exploration. It was the simple ancient understanding that a shared meal could bridge any divide, that fire and food and fellowship were the true foundations of civilization. The Academy would never forget the day 2 humans turned a cooking assignment into a lesson about what it truly meant to nourish not just bodies, but souls.